with Renee.
Yo. We wait all week and all day for more Saturdays with Renee.
Hey. Welcome to episode 84 of Saturdays with Renee right here on Black Liberation Media. I'm Jared Ball. And of course, we are here with Renee Johnston. What's up, Renee?
What up? You got the hat.
It's a special hat day on Saturdays with Renee. I didn't want our special guest to be the only one. I wanted to, I figured, why should he have all the fun?
Oh, that's too funny. That is
funny. So like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. A lot of great new offerings there here at Black Liberation Media. Salute to the patrons. Get your Sinners review and/or review and more. So please avail yourself of that and put this in your socials. Invite others to join you. But yeah, it's a special hat day here on Saturdays with Renee, and we got a superstar special additional guest.
I know. This is big time. I feel like I've like arrived now to have.
This might be it.
Them. I don't really know what to do with myself.
In addition to the awards and the recognition.
And I want to tease Geechee, but he's working. So
Kamau is running Geechee into the ground.
No, isn't Geechee in DC?
I know, I'm just playing. I don't know. I'm just playing.
I think they're in two different places right now.
Probably. I have no idea, honestly.
There's a lot happening.
It just seemed to fit. So anything else before we bring our guests up? Should we
I feel like all the extra stuff they can be here for.
Okay.
Versus having them wait. And I feel like people want them really. So why?
All right. Well, here we go. Without further ado, Dr. Todd Stephen Burroughs, Professor Tume Gant in the building. Greetings. Good morning to you both. Yeah, Todd, you weren't going to be the only one with the funny hat today, but my man.
I'm trying to figure out this hat you have on.
It's my Africa bucket hat. It's my Pan-African bucket hat. It's my soda hat.
And then you came on saying, hey, I was like, no, wrong 70s property.
That's true. Yep. And then I had to catch myself because it's now, associated with, such a shameful.
It's so rough, man. Because there's so much that you have to you would have to erase in order to not associate. And I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works. Honestly, for reals. I just don't know how that works.
I gotta tell Dr. Gant something. Dr. Gant, I listened to your commentary about now I forgot the film about jazz and remember what's it called?
Soundtrack.
Yeah.
Thank you. I listened to your commentary, and I take people on this channel very seriously. So I went and watched the Battle of Chile on your recommendation. I watched all of it. And I see what you're talking about in terms of the differences. I would just postulate that, of course, those people had a political analysis, even on the street. And those people had a channel following them around. It would have been nice had we had a channel following Maya Angelou and Rosa Guy around. Maybe we would have gotten that same kind of content, and that would have changed a little bit of the focus of the film. But I want to thank you for introducing me to the Battle of Chile, because I was just floored by it.
And Todd has also conferred upon you letters, Dr.
I know. I wish. I probably won't get there. but I appreciate
But
that.
I feel like Dr. Gann is still. I think
Yeah.
we should just do it anyway. I literally regularly tell people that you were one of the smartest people I know,
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
The people's
Yeah.
PhD.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that. But
There you
I you
go.
know, the real doctor I saved to y'all who did the work in the belly of the beast and had to deal with all of the, I know how those shenanigans work. So
It was some shenanigans.
yes. But no, it's funny you say that, Dr. Burroughs. There's a thing that I think about in that period. There was a lot of, radical stuff being recorded and followed via film. But I will say there is a lack in certain movements, mainly Black movements, of certain filmic recording that I've never really gotten to the bottom of why. It's something that I've been asking. If you think about people even from like the Weather Underground, they had little movies being made. We didn't have necessarily the same for the BLA. Now, maybe the BLA didn't want to do that. That's something that I would actually like to ask Daruba. When the Weathers were out there making that film with Haskell Wexler in the 70s. I forgot what it's called. I watched it recently, actually. Like, was the BLA like, nah, we ain't doing all that? Or would they have been open to something like that? I've always been very curious, which I think is something in your book too, because you have when we get to the piece, there's a lot of stuff about that in there. But I've always been very curious about that. Because you even see like the PFLP did one in the 70s. That's a great one. I said it to
you got to share
Jared.
some of these names again. I don't remember.
I sent this to you, Jared, a little while ago, like 6 months ago, but it's like a whole lot of stuff. The PFLP did one with the United Red Army. The United Red Army in Japan did a co-film called, I'll get the name of it in a second. They did a double film, and they made it with a filmmaker, I forget, Japanese filmmaker, who was a Marxist, interesting guy, a little strange. And they did a film about the PFLP. This is like 71. So there were these movies popping out. And then people like Patricio Guzman, who made the Battle of Chile. I mean, Guzman was directly connected to communist parties and Marxist parties. And that's really the legacy where I give the Latins a lot of credit in the film that they were making, because the Latins were Latin Americans. That movement, all those filmmakers from Globo Rocha to Guzman to Tomás Gutiérrez Alea, they were all in movement, part of parties. They were all dedicated. In the States, there was a schism that often existed that I think that might actually even come up today in talking about your piece.
And I'm going to continue to call you Dr. Gann because I think it's fun. Also, keep in mind, Maya Angelou's doctorate was honorary, and I heard she demanded that people address her as Dr. Angelou. Okay, so hey, do what you want to do.
That's crazy.
I feel like we could do I think we could do a whole ceremony and confer letters upon.
Why not?
I think we should. I think we should totally do like a whole, like a people's ceremony.
We can.
Dr. Burroughs. Dr. Burroughs, is your mic plugged in? Can I just?
Yes.
Can I just? Okay, because
you
just
sound
sound.
like
It just
a
sounds.
man.
It just sounds like it sounds.
You want to lean in a little bit like that? Is that better?
I mean, the best. The closest you could get. Where?
Right,
Where?
Is that better?
I mean, I don't know, man. All right. Well,
All right, I'll try to speak into it.
It does sound better when you're closer. It does.
Okay, I'll try to speak into it.
I think it's the room you're in. It's like, it's given this like cavernous feel, like you're.
I see.
Like you're in a symphony hall.
I see. All right.
But, we just want to make sure we can hear you clearly, and we want to invite folks because I know some folks are recently just joining us. Please like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, put this in your socials, invite others to join us because this conversation is about to get even better. And what Todd, you've done here with your book is kind of crazy, especially in light of the fact that I was just reviewing or looking through again something like Ibram Kendi's new book that's supposed to be the definitive biography of Malcolm X for you. And in your book that you kind of throw out here, like, this is just something I did over a couple of years, is to have a little blah, 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 blah. You do a lot in here that, for instance, Kendi doesn't do, that others don't do, in what are supposed to be these definitive masterpieces, overtly claiming to represent some certain histories. Here you are saying, I made this book about a fictional biography about a Muppet, a Sesame Street character, and there's a lot in here, my man. This is so congratulations. And I just hope, I just would want other people, the link is in the show description. I just hope people catch up to it. And yeah, so that was it. I just wanted
thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing, because what I was about to say for Dr. Gann, I was about to say that one of the interesting stories, as you know, but maybe the audience might not know, is that we owe Henry Hampton for saving the little bit of footage that we have of the movement, because it was television stations' policy to erase video when they were using video, and you know, because they would constantly reuse video, and that things have been lost, you know, entertainment shows have been lost and all that. And Henry Hampton, one of the things he did was he rescued a lot of that footage before it was lost. So I just wanted to point out that even what we have is deeply compromised, and if it wasn't for Henry Hampton, we wouldn't have a lot of that. Now, in terms of the book, it's interesting you say that, Jared, because I thought about this book for 2 years before I wrote it. I wrote it in 2 months, but I thought about it for like 2 years. And literally I kept the Roosevelt Franklin doll that I bought when I decided I was going to do this, and the album, like, on the corner of my bed, because I would have to look at it every single day. And I kept looking at it and looking at it, because I said, one day you're going to do it, right? And in terms of me and projects, I always tend to do projects when I'm ready to do them and not before. So it took a long time for me to sit down and do it, but once I did, it just came out. You know, I was happy to get it out, right? And I was happy to because, I mean, once I started it, like, okay, I don't know if you guys talk to novelists. I'm assuming you talk to a lot of novelists. Novelists go into this kind of thing, and it sounds pretentious until you try to write a novel, where they talk about how your subjects will be in your head and they will demand to be seen. Characters will pop in. They will demand to be seen. They will be demand to be in the novel. In my case, the characters were acting out scenes in my head and wouldn't let me alone until I wrote it down. So they were just like, you can just watch this all day, all night. You can just watch this until you write it down. Then once I wrote it down, then it was gone. Then the next day, other scenes popped up. And so it was a weird thing, but it was fun. It was fun. And I wrote about 1,000 words a day until I realized I could write 3,000 words a day. And I was like, okay, well, then you got to write 3,000 words a day. Don't, you know. And so I wrote 3,000 words a day until it was done. And I, you know, did little edits and things from like July when I finished it all the way up to when I published it. So that gives you a little bit of the idea of the process. But the book began, I mean, you know, ironically, I have a very rough relationship with teaching and community service and really anything that is not writing. You know, Dr. Ball knows that very well. I am the master of no, don't bother me. I'm not an activist. I'm not a revolutionary. No, don't ask me to do that. No. But it was because of teaching, I have to admit, is how this Roosevelt popped back in my head, because I was talking about the 70s and Sesame Street and all that. And then one of my students said, well, what about Roosevelt Franklin? And I was like, right. And I went on YouTube, saw the clips, and just cracked up. I was like, oh, this is amazing, right? Because I was originally going to write a magazine article. I wanted to write a magazine article. Dr. Ball knows I'm obsessed with magazines, and I just, you know, in all of my failures, because my career is really, my non-career is a bunch of failures just kind of strung together where I try to make them look impressive. One of the things I wanted to do was to write a big magazine article on Roosevelt. But when I looked at the content, there were these articles that still exist online calling him the Black Elmo. That was the entry point for mainstream journalism to talk about Roosevelt. When I looked at the content of everything, I said, okay, I could write a magazine article, but it's not going to say anything more than these 800-word articles, which is a problem. So one of the things I thought about doing was, I'm going to make sure to have an entire block where Roosevelt talks for himself. And I thought that would make an interesting, article, kind of artistic, article. But then that idea grew into this, because I was like, well, then if there's no content there that's not everywhere else, including in documentaries on Sesame Street, why not just let Roosevelt talk through the whole thing? And that's how the idea happened. And then the 2 years of me waiting for the time to do it started. And then, summer popped up. And I was like, oh, great, I got free time. Boom, started writing. So that's what happened, basically.
Cool. Can I jump in? I just kind of want to give some thoughts. Because I have this, I enjoyed this on many levels, and I found it fruitful on many levels. I would say the first level was definitely the imagination, but the levels that I think are more poignant for me are, I'm a native New Yorker. So
I see.
I had this conversation with Orasami Burton last year and we were just chatting one day about when I read Tip of the Spear, and we were talking just about BLA history, and I was saying, how much of this is New York history, and how a lot of this stuff was tying together stuff that I knew, like I knew little people who did this, and I go, oh, that's what this person was doing that I didn't quite understand when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And then I go back to my mother or my father, who's not from New York. My mother's from New York. My father isn't, but he's lived here quite a long time. But like my uncles and aunts, and then I'm piecing things together, and then places, institutions, whether it was television. And when I'm reading it, you're popping so much of these like landmark places, times, situations, but then tying it to something that's been another thought for me is television, radio, and the kind of like what I feel, this is my thing, the grand social experiment that we've all grown up in, especially all of us as like, we're different ages and slightly different generations, but we're media generation people, right? In different variants, and the social experiments that happen and the things that were kind of 1 degree removed, and you kind of expose like the degrees are often this. Or there's none at all, actually. If I think about it, there's actually no degrees at all. And in some ways, so the imagination you had to take this New York history, I'm very curious though, because I'm not from Jersey, but I'm curious how you thought about the Jersey kind of connection. Though I did enjoy that line towards the end about how Newark became the spot for the old folk. It's like the last bastion. Newark is the last bastion of Black revolutionaries, which is great. But that connection, and it was just it was like a soup of history. And then, because what I ended up doing as I was reading it half the time was going, wait, did he make this up, or is this real? I would get happily confused.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute, wait, no. Then I'm like, that can't be real. But then I go, wait a minute, no, that might be. So there were.
The point was to blend the two where you wouldn't know.
And you did a great job of it.
It worked.
You did a great job of it, but then it makes me realize how fantastical a lot of that stuff was. I mean, if you go back and if you read separate from your book, if you read the accounts of especially in the armed struggle period of the 70s to the early 80s, up to Brinks, like, man, some of that stuff is just wild.
But what you're talking about with degrees, I think, is very important, because I agree like I grew up in Newark my entire life, and then I moved to Maryland and stayed in Maryland for almost 25 years, and now I've been back 10 years. And of course, now after being back 10 years, I feel like I never left. I feel like I just had this dream where I went to another state, met all these other people, you know, these bushy PhD folks and all that. And I just came back, you know, right? And I just woke up out of REM sleep, right? But you're right in terms of there being no degree, because see, we're talking about a period where, and you know, Dr. Ball has heard these stories a million times, so he'll have to just be patient. We're talking about a time where, you know, just to give you an example, one broadcaster, you know, Gary Bird. James Brown brought him every piece of furniture in his first New York City apartment when he moved from Buffalo, where he was a teenage DJ at WFO, to when he came to WWRL AM, where he took the midnight to 5 a.m. shift. And his boss was a program director by the name of Bob Law. And together, Bob Law and Gary Bird, you know, they were looking at what the white hippies were doing on FM radio with Progressive FM, where they were talking about issues and human rights in Vietnam and all that. And Law and Bird said, well, we got to get together and do Progressive AM. And so that's when Gary Bird comes out with his spoken word album. He's like the local Gil Scott-Heron, right? And that's also when he decides to call himself a disc journalist. And see, so even then you see the consciousness and all these kind of things forming. Now, growing up in Newark, we had our own AM, you know, soul radio station. And so many people did. I grew up listening to local newscasters talk about local community. And then, you know, when the local newscasters weren't there, there was something called NBN, National Black Network, where I heard all this Black news from all around the country, from all these freelancers, because people were being hired en masse in radio and television in the late 60s. It's so prevalent. I even have a lecture comparing Mumia Abu-Jamal to Oprah Winfrey, because their careers are quite similar in terms of time and space and choices. Because see, this is going to make you laugh. One of the most radical Black newscasters, by his own account, was some guy named Tom Joyner. He was like, I was the most Black power, da, da, da. But then he said, I noticed all the DJs got all the women and all the money. So he let that go. So I'm going to go make this money. But so many people were making these kind of decisions because, as you said, broadcasting was new and people were experimenting in the medium. And, you know, public television is one big experiment. I was born the same week Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was. But it turned out he had experimented with that show. He had been experimenting with that kind of show for like 10, 15 years before, including having a version of it in Canada. So he came back home from Canada to Pennsylvania to do the show, and it premiered the same week I was born. So this was a period of experimentation in which I believe there were very little degrees. Now, I'm not a boomer. I was being born during this period. So I only know by all the accounts and all the things I've grown up with. But growing up in Newark, New Jersey, you are saturated with New York news. And in my case, I was saturated with Black radio and Black television, particularly Black public affairs television. So a lot of this stuff I just kind of picked up. And in many ways, this novel is me regurgitating all of that and even kind of letting it go. Like I wanted to put it in a place where I could always access it. Because one of my failures was to be a Black press historian. It's just, I tried really hard, but I didn't want to be a weekend historian. And that's what I felt Morgan State and other places offered me. They offered me I did be a weekend historian, and my view was, screw you. I can be a weekend historian on my own. I don't need you for that. So like, this novel, on one level, it's about the true story of Roosevelt, because really all I did was embellish the details. Like, this really happened to him, right? And I'm speaking to him as if he's a human being, because he was treated like a human being. He was treated like a Black man. So on one level, it's about that. And on another level, it's about how television was an experiment and how we were guinea pigs in that experiment. And on another level, it's about the problems of desegregation and the complexity of desegregation, right? Because I don't make Joan Gans Cooney, who I never refer to her as that. I call her the white lady. That's Joan Gans. That's the creator of Sesame Street. I don't view her as the villain, right? It would have been very easy to make her the villain, but she's not the villain, but she's also not the hero either, right? She's somebody that decided to experiment on us using advertising techniques, using all sorts of things. And there was a Black psychologist involved. If you go to the end of my notes because I, as you see, I got a lot of notes, and the notes are all true. And there's actually a Black psychologist who Joan hired to be part of Sesame Street, right?
And here I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I was waiting for this moment.
Sure.
Because I didn't see you reference it, so I was hating. And I don't even know if you remember this. So it's already in the show description, but I just want to share this little clip of what you're talking about.
So I was in material that Dr. Haight gave us to read because I have an interest in children's programming, and so I was reading about your work dealing with children and their assault via mass media, and I was particularly interested because you were writing about this in the early 70s, and I know that was the period in which the Children's Television Workshop was created, and PBS had begun to create and distribute shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And so I was interested particularly because one of the things in media studies we deal with is the fact that Sesame Street, although a respite against
Todd.
the violent images that are part of programming for children, although a respite, Sesame Street is also set up in terms of an advertising technique, using advertising strategies to kind of grab children who are 2, 3, 4 years old and make them very susceptible to advertising. Whereas I know Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood has a more psychological focus in terms of preschool childhood development. So I was very interested in the fact that you were writing about this at the same time that these programs were being created.
Well, I have to confess, I was working originally with the people at Sesame Street when they were getting started. When they originally were planning the Sesame Street, I was working with them from the very beginning. So I have to say that whatever criticisms I have to take my share of the responsibility.
Well,
I completely forgot that I did that.
So I'll let folks.
I'm going to link to that tonight on the
Please
novel.
check the link in the show description. It's one of probably the last interview that Dr. Pierce gave, and our comrade Dr. Haight put that together for the program we did in 2014.
Thank you, Dr. Haight.
Yeah, we had to, we got some criticism. I think some people misunderstood and thought we were being unfair to an elder, but we were trying to give him his flowers at the end of his life. And he didn't remember a lot. He was clearly, weakened, but so we sort of, walked him through some of the highlights and jarred some of his memory and whatnot. And I just, when I saw that you made reference to him in your book, I was saying, wow, shout out to you and Haight, and there's been quite a catalog created just in our little bit of work alone. Yeah,
we were doing so many shows back then. We were doing a weekly show. Yeah, either you or Haight was picking me up at Hyattsville, and we were going down to the studio. Yeah. And the only show I really remember out of that whole period, I know we did a lot, was of course our work with Frank Wilderson, because, and I want to throw some hate on that, we were the first people to interview Frank Wilderson in Washington, D.C.
Well, now I at least am being condemned for that. This backlash. But hey, just real quick, one of his biggest detractors, Lewis Gordon, whose interview is the only one I've ever done that I took down because he accused Frank of lying about South Africa and wouldn't offer up any evidence.
Wow.
He has come out in defense of Israel. So I'm not saying 1 is 1 and 2 is 2 or whatever. I'm not trying to do Terrence Howard math here, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
You're
Wow,
just
I
saying,
didn't.
and
I
think,
it. I'm not. I'm not. I can't say I'm totally surprised, though I am a little shocked. But
Yeah.
wow, I
Yeah.
gotta link me on that one.
Yeah. Jared,
Whoa.
Jared Ware sent me something, and it's in print. He's in print, so it's not, so I'm like,
But doesn't that just clear up a lot though?
it
I mean,
does.
for
for real.
me it does,
does.
but
No, it
I'm just
does.
saying.
It does.
Again, I'm not trying to do the Terrence Howard bad, but I
And by the way, I just want to compliment myself on the intellectualism of the question. See, that was back when I had to really see. Y'all don't really, maybe y'all do understand this, but hanging with Jared is hard because you can't just like slouch. You've got to like.
This is ridiculous. No, they don't. No, Renee. Certainly, no.
You got to be up on things. You got to read things. You got to, So like, I remember that point because I was like, damn, Jared's putting me on the radio in Washington D.C. I need to bring my A game every single time I open my mouth. So
it's these two over here now. I'm
mad Jared does that all the time. Will you stop? Because literally in the chat when people were coming for me about sinners, and all right, to be fair, it wasn't that people were actually coming for me. It was people who disagreed on one of my chats. My hashtag was literally hashtag I blame Intume and Jared.
There it is. And Intume, I don't know if you heard me the other day talking about Andor, but I said Jared destroyed me ever liking a docudrama again. Like I can't watch docudramas anymore.
I haven't seen the Andor thing yet, but no, I hear that.
I blame Jared 99% for that, and 1% because I'm now old and I don't remember now what's true and what's not. So I definitely don't want to mix it up in my head.
Well, that's not true either because your book is evidence that what you just said is a lie. So saying you don't know what's what and don't remember this, that, and the third, you've just written again. You just lied on the show because we just read your book and
Todd right now is like, I don't even know how to fight this because he's right.
No, you're right on this. I'm not saying that you're absolutely right on this, but other than this, if you walk away from this and you start talking about other things, I may not remember. You see, I remember that interview.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's 10, 11 years ago already. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, please. Yeah, I don't want to derail us too much. The point.
Go back to the book.
And Chester Pierce, just quickly. And the reason we were dealing with him that is because Dr. Haight wanted to make sure he got his flowers because people have been giving undue credit for the concept of microaggressions, where Dr. Pierce had led the way with. So if not, established or coined. So for him to be humbled in terms of his involvement with Sesame Street, anyway, please continue. Just go ahead. I just want to
he did what he could, and you see in the notes, I have a whole article on him in the notes for people to read. But going back to the book, I mean, and let's talk a little bit about memory. That stuff, that book, like I said, I wrote that book for a lot of different reasons, right? I wrote that book for psychological reasons. Like I was, just stewing in my own failure as a writer and as a scholar and all that. And basically the 10-year-old in me, because see, when I was 10, I would take a sheet of paper and I would write my own comics, right? And I would adapt other characters that I liked and I would put them in as my own characters and do my own comics. I showed Dr. Ball this once when we were at Morgan, and he saw some comics I did when I was 10 years old. And of course, with no creativity and a lot of ego, I called it Todd's Comics. Todd Comic number 1, Todd's Comic number 2. And like I was doing fun things like taking Snoopy, and instead of him being the World War I flying ace, I stole from Looney Tunes with Duck Dodgers in the 24th and 1/2 century. And so I created Buck Beagle in the 24th and 3/4 century. And I wrote his adventures, right? So like when I was stewing over, like I said, my failure and my age and all that, all of a sudden my 10-year-old popped out and said, look, you've been trying to be important for like 45 years now. Like, aren't you tired of this? Like, can we just go back to like creating and doing kind of like Todd's Comics? Can we do that? And that was another impetus because I was like, yeah, I have had enough of that because I've been success adjacent and intellectually adjacent and a bunch of things adjacent my whole life, right? And I made sure that I was going to be that. I mean, that's why I went to grad school. That's why I did all the things that I did. And I was tired of that. I was literally tired of that. And I was tired of it 99% because it didn't work, right? And I was also tired of it because I just was tired of having that kind of persona. And so when I threw that in the garbage can, ironically, in writing the novel, I then dealt with all of the stuff that I had amassed in my head that would never leave. And so once the novel was done, it was like my head just cleared out. It's like when you get your doctoral dissertation, like there's a whole part of your brain that just clears out because you're no longer thinking about that anymore. And you wake up and you go, oh, wow, I got free time in my head. Forget about free time physically. I had free time in my head. And that's kind of what happened. Like now I'm a YouTube, reaction video addict. Why? Right. Because at the time, why? Because I made sure this was documented. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I have a list of questions.
Oh, go right ahead.
I have like 2 pages.
Go right ahead.
I was Todd with this while I was reading.
By the way, speaking of pages, somebody asked for my Andor notes early this morning, and I gave it to them. I was very happy.
There you go.
Dr. Gann.
Look, after I finish the season, I will go back and read your notes.
Dr. Gann, they were making fun of me because I wrote 50 pages of notes on Andor season 2 and gave it to them as discussion points. And not only did they didn't read it, but they openly said on air that they didn't read it, and they openly said that they even stopped looking at my emails and which I was saying. And I was like, okay, then, and so I said, my feelings were hurt, but I was like, okay, so that it is 50. No, it absolutely is. And so I said on air, I said, that's okay. If anybody who wants my notes, toddpanther@gmail.com. And I got a Facebook DM from somebody going, yeah, please, absolutely. So I was very happy. And by the way, just to give you an idea of what I'm like personally, and Dr. Ball knows this. See, Dr. Ball views teaching and all the things he does as recruitment for the revolution, right? It's kind of weird. As a personality, he's half people person and half isolationist, right? I am 100% isolationist. Right? I want to write and read and not be bothered. And when I'm finished writing and reading, before it was television, now it's YouTube. I'm completely addicted to like Doctor Who reaction videos now, right? So a lot of this was for me, okay, service for me is providing those 50 pages. Like to me, that's service. Now, a lot of people go, no, that's not service. Writing is not activism. Writing is not this. Writing is not that. And you're right. Writing is none of that. I'm not trying to educate or argue or convert anybody. I'm just trying to figure out reality in a way that makes sense to me.
Okay, so we gotta stop you there. No, we gotta stop you there because that's bullshit. So can we just be? That may be what you tell yourself, but I am telling you that there is no one who is reading what you write and not thinking about all of the things in which you're writing about, right? So like I read this, and in knowing you in the way, like I like to think that we're buds now, right? We've been to meals together, like we're good. And so I know you may not be like in your head when you're writing, you're not like, oh, this is going to really revolutionize somebody. This is going to make somebody think. This is going to make somebody look something up. But it's exactly what it does, right? Because I now have a list of things like, I didn't know this thing. Let me go look at, is this real? Like, did he make this up? Is this true? Is this the history? Recognizing the names, like some of the places. So for me, this actually brings us back to the conversations we're always having about movies, right? And that when something is made to make money, you should never expect anything from it. But it is the thing that is done from the core of a person just to share information that may never get popular, may never make money, but that's exactly the thing you're going to learn from. So you may think that you're just writing it just to write it. You're not trying to make any revolution. You're not trying to, do the thing. But because you're not trying to make money, and because you're just trying to share information, and because you just want people to think about things in a different way, it's exactly what you're doing. It's literally exactly what you're doing.
Well, I'll yield to that, and then I'll hear your questions, because I want to hear your list of questions.
Renee, can
Go. Yeah,
can I throw one thing and get the question? So this just hit me, actually, saying what I said and hear what you said. Because you tap into something I don't know if you're quite aware of, Dr. Burroughs. You might be. There's a thing with New York and where they mined talent. So you do know what I'm talking about. There's a thing that he really taps into here that's very honestly relevant to my own existence. Because I come from Harlem, uptown, lower middle class, and there are these white liberals who go into the places and they mine talent.
That's right.
And this is where the degrees are always going to be so short.
That's right.
Because the talent that's being mined is also where revolutionaries are being born.
There it is.
Right?
There it is.
But there's a thing that you get on the back end of the book that resonates for me. Because I had someone come to me the other day that I hadn't seen in years. So he was like, "What you doing these days, man?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We thought you was gonna go be this big actor in Hollywood." And he was talking to me like I was like I was disappointing him. And I said, "Well, I'm doing all this stuff with my, education and, teaching, and I'm doing my own films, and I'm doing political education." And he was just miffed by it.
Right.
It didn't really make any sense to him.
Right.
And what happens is there is a group of us who go into that world, and Roosevelt felt like that person who went into that world, did it, saw some things, rubbed the elbows with a couple of those really bigwig people who went to others, and then also people who disappeared, and we have no idea where they are, right? And then he's one of those people. And I was like, I know a lot of people like that. I am one of those people who was in that, rubbed elbows, and then kind of went off into a kind of different pathway. And you really tap onto something that is very, very relevant to New York history and how the kind of New York ecosystem works with mining talent within the social experiment. In particular, I think through the 70s through the 90s. I think now it's just different.
Right.
But the 70s through the 90s, I think was that period where you were seeing this kind of thing. So can I tell you
how I did that?
Please.
Because I had an honest to gosh, no bullshit, Langston Hughes / Zora Neale Hurston level mentor who was a Harlemite. I mentioned this girl, Vicky, in the book. Vicky is Vicky Golson, who was an intern at Soul. See, that's one of the facts. And she went and got her PhD at 25 years old, worked on the Wiz, and took the money from working on the Wiz to buying a brownstone on 155th Street. And I met her when she taught at Seton Hall. And she was the beginning of my decolonization. Because see, the weird thing with me in communication and journalism is I was taught colonized journalism and decolonized journalism at the same time. And I was young enough to not be upset over it or worry about the contradictions over it. I just understood that I was being taught one thing by Seton Hall University and another thing by WLIB AM with Gary Bird on. That was back when he was on in the afternoon before he even got into being on in the morning. And then watching Gil Noble, person I had grown. I mean, Gil Noble was like a hero in our community. Gil Noble, Melvin Tolliver. These were household names in our community in the early 70s, right? So like the duality was always there. And so because I knew, Dr. Golson, I was able to understand that, yeah, they go uptown because it's easier to go uptown than to go to Newark, but when they're bored of going to uptown, then they go to Newark. And that's where we get all these hip hop artists coming out of Newark and East Orange and all these places. Because, they get bored sometimes of just going uptown, right? They accept other things. So I'm glad you caught that. Because I wanted to convey that without explaining it.
It's untalked about, and it's not something that I think that's well understood.
Because if you notice, Roosevelt answers an ad in the Amsterdam News.
Yeah.
And he goes down to a building that is unmarked because they don't want anybody to know what's going on, right? So he doesn't even know where he's right. And I did all of that purposely.
And you said that they put it in print, not the radio, to do that, to create that effect as well. Because you said if they had put the announcement on radio, there would have been a whole bunch of people down there looking to compete, but they put it in print.
Because they wanted somebody literate.
Mm-hmm.
So they put it in the Amsterdam News. See? So I wanted to show that sophistication without explaining it.
Brilliant. That's really beautiful.
So when Roosevelt goes into the building, he's in Wonderland. He's like, where is this? Right? I've heard of uptown. I mean, I've heard of downtown, but I didn't know this existed. Right. And so I'm even still going through that. I mean, I'm Graydon Carter, some great magazine editor, just came out with a memoir. And I mean, I knew the folks at Vanity Fair had money and their reporters were, their journalists were doing all these great things and all that. But I didn't know how well they lived. They lived extremely well. I mean, because I always knew, for instance, that a 20,000 word article, they would get 60,000 for, right? But I just didn't know that in Vanity Fair, it might be more than that. So I'm like Roosevelt. I'm still learning. I'm still going through the door and learning about all this stuff. There's a book on the Village Voice that I haven't finished because I started reading it and I said, no, if you finish this book, you're just going to get mad because you're going to find out that all these white radicals you thought you were reading were just the radical version of the elite class. And they were at the Village Voice by choice because they wanted independence outside of hegemony, but they were still part of the hegemonic class. And so I stopped reading. I said, no, I don't want to be angry. That's okay. And I may pick it up again one day and try to finish it. But Renee, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. This is all part of it, right? Because so it's so fun because I'm also a native New Yorker, but from the other side because I grew up in South Brooklyn, right?
And by the way, I wrote a whole essay on Vicki Golson while she lived. Her only comment to me was when she read it was like, okay, you have syntax issues. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with that, but okay. Because, I'm a writer that doesn't know any of the parts of speech or composition. I never learned that. I just learned how to write and whether something looked good or not. But if you want to read it, it's on my blog. It's called Asante Sana Vicki Golson. And I go into how she's in the tradition of Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and all of this. And at the bottom of it, I put her comments on a panel that Jared was also on. I don't know if he remembers this, but we went to Columbia University and, we were allowed a panel at the Manning Marable conference, which in itself was amazing, right? Because we had finished savaging Manning Marable. But Vicki Golson did all these comments about media and Sesame Street. And I have that as an appendix to the main essay. So you can find that.
Man, we don't have that on tape. That was a wild day.
I got it. We do. You know what? I think Sashwood has it because that's how I got it. I think I got that.
All right, I need to rap with him because just quickly through you, I not only got to meet Vicki Golson, but I got to meet Gil Noble and many others. So definitely appreciate all of that. And that panel was a wild day because we were the lone critics in the room.
And they put us to the side. They made us stepchildren. They put us to the side.
Every major scholar and public intellectual was there, from Robin Kelly to Cornel West. Everybody was there, and we were in the corner in the stepchild, children's table room.
Yep. And none of them showed up, and none of those bigwigs showed up to our panel.
Oh, nobody should. No, of course they weren't going to show up to the panel, and again to this, and none, would openly refute what we said either. But that anyway, that's a separate.
And of course,
that was just an interesting moment. So yeah,
it was. And one of the reasons I will always love and respect my mentor Herb Boyd was that he was on the panel with us.
That's right, and despite being the co-editor of the book that quote unquote rivaled ours is a critique of Marable's,
Right.
Herb, and no disrespect to Herb and Haki, but I have been going back through this,
right?
And I see that we made an important contribution. I'll just leave.
And Renee, we talked about opportunism once. I'm in that book because Herb asked, "Do you want to be in that book?" And I said yes, and I pissed off Jared and Paul Coates for doing that.
Because not only are you in that book, but rest in power. I know you because you co-edited, which did piss me off.
Right.
But so is Glenn Ford, which also.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I was not thrilled that and he said something to the effect that I think he said they asked first or something like that. And I was like, that don't mean a goddamn thing, Glenn. God damn it. That should mean
writers are opportunists, Renee. That's why I'm saying don't go by opportunism when you write. Go by choices made and policies and all that. But look, Renee, again, it's time for you to give your questions. I want to hear it.
I almost gave up on the questions. Look, I get y'all excited. I start talking and everybody's like, ah!
No, jump in. I want to hear these questions. Jump in.
So, one, I thought the concept of, you started out by talking about how many Black people got hired after MLK was murdered, right? And so this was one of those things where I was like, I need to look this up because this is literally like, it's like rinse and repeat, right? Like if that's really the trajectory, like you can start looking at what happened in 2020 with DEI, and all of a sudden we're going to start, hiring all the Blacks to run the DEI programs at all these corporations. And then as they slowly lose their jobs and all of those policies start to go away, people start getting very focused on this DEI thing instead of focusing on the fact that it was just like this quasi fix that was put in place in the moment in order to shut, like, right back to Launder and Black Rage. Like, let's give the Blacks something.
And
it's going to be little, but we're going to give it to them so that they can think they got something.
I got to tell you, I'm not even 1 degree away from that, because I worked for Ron Daniels for 2.5 years when he got this $1 million grant, and it was literally George Floyd money. And a friend of mine at the same time got hired to be DEI for an entire city in Massachusetts. But unfortunately, see, again, to show you the technology here, my friend got hired only as a grant, and now the grant is run out. So see, that he wasn't even part of the budget. And I joke, with the idea that, okay, so let me get this straight. You're not part of the budget, but the dog in the fire department is part of the budget. You're a grant. And see, that's, we go out and joke about that and talk about Malcolm X and, kill that dog and all of that, but that's serious. And so, yeah, this history has repeated itself. Absolutely it has. Because a lot of people got a lot of money after George Floyd.
Right, exactly. Right. And so, so that was one of the things that stood out. This idea of trying to change television from the buffoonery of which Black people were at the time, always kind of, that was the perception, right? Like that was what was shown on television. So then this goal of, I'm going to do something that is not buffoonery, and it's going to be an intentional choice to do something that is not buffoonery, but then for it to literally like come back to buffoonery with at the end, towards the end, how he compares the new characters that he feels like are based upon this character that lived just for a little while on Sesame Street. And I was like, we literally had a boomerang effect. Like, I'm gonna go out there and try and change this thing, and somehow it still got sucked back to the thing that he was trying to change. And I was fascinated by that trajectory, like that movement, because I feel like that's what happens a lot, right? Like people make an attempt to force a change on something, and you get like this small moment where you feel like something's going to happen, and then you turn around and we're like right back to where we started from. So like that was intentional, I assume, right?
It was intentional because it was historical. I mean, as a historian, again, this is what I thought I was going to devote my life to studying, as Dr. Ball can tell you. So when it came time to kind of dump this info dump, I had the whole history in my head, and I just said, okay, let's walk a fictional character through the history that actually happened. So, for instance, everything I write about Maria from Sesame Street, Sonia, is true. Everything I write about her is true. Everything I write about David, who had mental problems and had to leave Sesame Street, and it shows how people can kind of fall off without the support system, right? There's always that story in the urban milieu about a brother who's great and then who falls off, right? That's true, right? So the history where particularly at the end, where Roosevelt is hating on all of these characters, that happened in the way it happened. And if Roosevelt had existed, he would have literally done that. There's no way he would not have done that.
Fascinating.
And so I put it in the chronology. Actually, I try to put it in the chronology in which it actually happened.
Yeah.
Because I start with Rodney Allen Ripley, who was Gary Coleman, when Gary Coleman was being born, right? He was the original black mascot kid, right? Gary Coleman is an improvement or upgrade of Rodney Allen Ripley. So this thing has always been there, you know? So I just put it in order and had him hate on everybody in order because he said, look, everybody stole my shit.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. It's like, y'all, if people have not read this book, and I really feel like there's like I want you to almost get it printed so that people can pick up the book, read it.
Yeah, I'd be
sued. I know you don't want to do that. And
no, I'd be sued because see, the Harry Potter people went through this. It was a huge court case because this person who had a website called Pottermore, which I think still exists. It's a number one resource on Harry Potter. She tried to print it, and J.K. Rowling sued her, saying no, it's copyright. And that's why you see the big legal disclaimer I have in front of that. Don't sue me. This is fan fiction. Don't sue me. You can't do nothing here unless you want to, unless you want to be mean. So just ignore me the way all of you have ignored me my whole career. I'm just hoping you'll ignore me some more, right? But no, so I can't print this. But then I didn't worry about it because then I said, okay, A, I always wanted to do something for Medium, and B, this should be like a people's novel. This should be a free novel for the people.
I mean, so but we learned you can do free novels. Like you don't have to.
Right, but no,
right?
No, but if I reproduce this thing, no, it's lawsuit.
That's unfortunate because I feel like one of the downsides to it being on Medium for me is the scroll read for a long time. I don't love that, right? Like I like to be able to the page, like even with a PDF for like a book on whatever medium people use, like it reads like a book, right? Like there are pages and you can flip, and so the continuous scroll is what made it so hard for me to get through the whole thing, was that continuous scrolling of words. But I guess we can. I don't know. Can you make it a PDF? Can you do a PDF of it?
You can always cut and paste it, or I can cut and paste it and make it a PDF, and you want to pass it around. That's no problem.
Because I also think like there've been like 3 people who are asking how can they donate to you to support this writing, right? So I feel like if there's like a PDF version of it, and you're not selling the PDF version, but people can give a donation, and then. I don't know. I'm thinking a whole lot right now, but
that might be good. But I'm going to tell you something funny about the scroll and an option for the scroll. Now, this is very funny. you don't have to scroll the book to read it. You can actually click on audio read, and this white male voice will read the entire thing. Because I think it takes about an hour and a half to listen to, if you listen to it. But there's a button that you can press on it. Just go to the novel. You'll see the button. You can press on the button and just listen to it for an hour and a half. But it's going to be weird hearing a white male voice that has no connection to this at all.
And Tume actually gave me another thing that he uses to listen.
So I use Speechify to listen to some of it when I was on the road, but I got a black woman.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I got a black woman. Because I had to say the default voice was some white dude. I was like, well, this ain't gonna work.
No, it's not gonna work. Right.
But the only problem is that for that option, Todd, you have to be a paid medium member.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like it's not letting me.
That's not an option if you just open up Medium. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll let you click on it, but then you have to. It wants you to become a $5 a month or more member. And
so the audio doesn't play unless you're a member.
Mm-mm.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, thank you for letting me know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I would also advocate for a link to a PDF. I had someone tell me recently she was reading something that I wrote, and it's not longish, but not very long. And she said the scroll is tough. She said if you just had a PDF that I could download as an option, I would love that.
The copyright is mine. I mean, we can always do a Black Liberation Media book, the Black Liberation Media version of the book. I mean, it's just cutting and pasting.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just take some administrative work.
We got to look in, but the administrative work is not like.
This is what I would suggest, Todd. Humbly. Set up a Patreon. Put this up there as something that people can get if they are a paid subscriber to your Patreon.
He's making the face.
That's really close to paying for it. For me, that's really close to that. I wouldn't.
All right, I don't know what I'm talking about, so maybe this is bad. If this is not financial advice, as they say,
I wouldn't risk that. I wouldn't risk that. But I wouldn't risk that. Too much.
But okay. Set up a Patreon.
Okay.
Put this on your Patreon for free.
Okay.
Then if people want to donate, they can become a paid subscriber to your Patreon.
Okay.
In other words, you're not offering this, you're offering this, people can get it for free. And then, and then people by encouragement or just by, whatever.
So I can set up a free Patreon.
Yeah, set up a Patreon. You set it up so you can receive money, do all the bank account stuff. It doesn't take that long. But then with each post that you upload, you can determine who gets it. So you can say this one's free. You can say this one is for paid subscribers. You could say this one is for people who pay just a one-time fee. You could set up, there's all kinds of options. And someone told me to do Patreon like 20 some years ago. And I was like, nah, because I don't want to charge for anything, this, that, a third. And I wish I had done it.
Right.
So,
right. With all the content you did, I don't know. Medium a tipping function?
I didn't know that. I don't know about that either. So maybe they could do that too. But if you're not a member, you still would have to be a member to hear it, though.
Okay,
that's all.
I would probably go with that medium tipping function. I'm going to look up that because that way it can still, there wouldn't be any confusion or me trying to subterfuge by using copyrighted material and having people pay for it. So I'm going to look into that.
So, like for instance, just as a for instance. Okay. When I tried to put it on YouTube, it got flagged. So when I put up this what I think is a funny and serious overlay that I created with R.M. Brown talking about zone of interest, it got flagged on YouTube as copyright. I put it on I put that same clip on Patreon for free.
Okay.
And it's fine.
Okay.
And if people want to subscribe, they can do that. But if they just want to see it, it's just there for free. And I know Mtume does a lot of free shit on Patreon. And on the one hand, I'm appreciative. On the other hand, I'm kind of like,
I've been doing a little less.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. All right. There you go.
Okay.
Because
All
I
right,
do
well,
think, I mean, I do think, you know,
yeah.
I've always struggled with asking for any money for this kind of work, especially once I started having a job.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, I don't know.
People
It's
respect
well,
what
it's,
you.
but
but it's
now, just
also,
last, I'm sorry, one more thing.
no, go ahead.
Lastly, now I only do it. Well, not only my primary reason for doing it is not money.
Mhm.
It's the idea of some sort of psychological, you know, buy-in or purchase, pun intended, for people who want to say some shit on a
Okay.
certain thing. Like, it's like, if you really want to comment and be, you know, and engage, I don't want to hear from you if you just want to drive by, you know, swing by and say fuck you, Jared,
Right.
or, you know,
Right.
or, you know, but if you want, if you want to pay.
Well, no, that's what the reaction. That's what the reaction
Yeah.
channels do. Like, you know, if you join us, you can really talk about Doctor Who. We have this meeting every.
But
Tuesday.
it's also like
I understand.
it's also like you're less likely to hear from people who are not legitimately trying to engage with what you're
Right.
doing.
Right.
If you don't put something on. That's the thinking. I don't know.
All right. Well, I gotta think about this and maybe talk to you and Dr. Gann. I'm still calling you that, and Renee offline. And you know, we can look at options. Renee, you had more questions?
Oh, I mean, does anyone else? Okay, because I got
you look at a list.
I got a list. All right,
and
so
we're only an hour in. I'm assuming this is 2 hours. So
oh yeah, we're going, and we don't have a time limit anymore. So you know, we can't go too far past because we gotta let Jared get up and stretch and water and all those things. And eventually, I do have to go act like I have a child and a husband.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say, like, you
day.
know, so like, but we do have, you know,
but
like,
we do, you know, we got a little bit of room to go a little bit longer if we need to. All right, so Big Bird being
IRL, you have IRL.
There we go. So Big Bird being 4.
Yes.
Is this real?
Yes.
Is this like a legit? What?
Yes.
So when I read it, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. But yes. I literally never ever would have come up with that.
Yes. And
so
and
Big Bird was a 4-year-old.
And not only that, because he was 4 perpetually, that's why halfway through Sesame Street's run, they allowed Snuffleupagus to be seen by the rest of the cast and by everybody, because they kept doing this running gag with Snuffleupagus would only show up, and Big Bird was the only person to see him. But then after a few years of that, they said, you know, we've got to change that, because we don't want small children to think that they would not be believed if they told a parent something. And so there's this famous scene on Sesame Street, you probably see on YouTube, where Big Bird introduces Snuffleupagus to everybody.
And I actually remember that.
And it's like a major event. It's probably the second most famous, maybe the third most famous event on Sesame Street. The first, obviously, being the death of Mr. Hooper, which was so deep. They did a primetime special, and I remember watching that special.
I actually do too,
because they had to explain death to children, right?
Yeah.
And the second most famous Sesame Street moment was Maria and Luis getting married. And
I remember that too.
In one of the final scenes, you know, they show David, and you know, David lets the audience know, you know, we're just friends now. It's okay. I'm happy for Maria. You know, and that was one of the last times he was on Sesame Street. So you know, the show has moments that many Gen Xers obviously remember. I mean, it's designed for us, for Gen Xers, and for, you know, older millennials that they remember. Now, of course, kids have Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel is now the new thing. You guys know about Miss Rachel?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm avoiding it with my 17-month-year-old. I can't really do Miss Rachel.
What's the story with Miss Rachel?
There's nothing. I don't have anything like overt against it. It's just her voice and her presentation. Bluey is the other big one.
And Bluey, and you know what?
She looks like the female version of the dude that who used to do with the blue dog.
Yeah, that's
Blue's Clues.
Yeah,
Blue's Clues.
Right.
That's what she looks like. I'm just looking here. That's what she looks like. I don't know if that's what she's going for, but.
And Jared, you would love this video on YouTube where it shows infants, and I mean infants, 6 months old, maybe a year old, and they react to that music coming on, her going, hello, and literally their entire physiology changes.
Okay.
And that's something that I know you probably want to use in class or something. But when I saw that, I thought of you. I said, that's a Jared Ball video right there.
For my classes now?
The engagement, the response.
Yeah.
Like,
interesting.
For media. Oh, absolutely. In terms of programming. I mean, literally 6 months old are programmed by her voice and the music and her saying hello. And you literally see the physiology in the baby. Literally, I mean, and they made a video of it. There's like 6 babies in the video, and they all react in that same way. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I this is something that I plan to study over the summer because I've just started letting my daughter look at television just like now.
Right.
And these kind of response reactions.
Right.
That immediately gonna happen. Yeah, I have peeped that Miss Rachel is very pro-Palestine. So, that's like, shout out to her. But it's more about the format. I'm just not, I don't understand it yet, and I feel like I need to look at it. I need to watch an hour of Miss Rachel without my daughter before I throw my daughter in there because of what we're talking about here. The socialization aspect of this. Yeah. One point about the Big Bird being, the perpetual age. I can't not remember. I have to go back to what How to Read Donald Duck when they talk about how they stay a certain age forever.
Excellent.
And what that does psychologically and politically, how they can't grow up. They're always immature. And how that functions in the social kind of functioning of that character needing to constantly be, whether it's disciplined or learning or how they learn or how you put them within the social of that area. I just find that a fascinating conceit that these pieces have created.
And that crosses over to comics as well, because Archie Andrews and Peter Parker are never going to reach 30 ever.
If I can, I just want to quickly show, because I'm a huge fan of that book.
Please.
How to Read Donald Duck.
Absolutely.
And I can't say enough about how good this book is, and
you can find all sorts of PDFs free online.
However, and even though I still got to salute Dr. James Turner. I got the book from him when he had a flooding in his basement and he was giving stuff away, and I immediately grabbed that. But fascinating. These are not just cartoons. Yeah. This is not just entertainment, and people have been clear on that for a long time, because that was written in the early 70s.
Yep.
And it was go back to Battle of Chile when Pinochet took over.
That's right.
They grabbed copies of that book and they burned them.
That's right.
In the streets.
Wow.
Burned them in the streets.
Wow.
Yeah. Everything
I've never seen that book, heard of that book, and none of it, and so I've written it down because what I need is another book to.
And if we ever need an excuse to bring it back, we all
Welcome
need another.
to Life with Jared, Renee. Welcome to Life with Jared, because this is what it's like.
Well, in defense though, I do this to Jared all the time. Like, I just sent him an email last week that said, "Have you ever heard of this book?" So, and his answer was no, and so.
Right.
So we are equally guilty.
That's what it's intellectual curiosity will be the ruin of us all, but everything about race, class, and gender that you could ever want as a radical primer is in that book. I mean, they raise questions about how do you have these generations of ducks with no women, like.
Right. I mean, that is wild.
It was one of the questions that I remember them asking.
I've never thought of that. That is so true.
By the way, the comments are.
Although, when did Daisy Duck become a thing?
Okay.
Because Daisy's
not by then.
Okay.
And
80s, I think that's the 80s.
By the way, the comments are contradicting me. Yes, I know there is a version of Peter Parker where he is 30 years old in terms of the comic, But just remember, that's the comics, and it took a long time for him. It took him 60 years to turn 30. And I just want to point out that the movie Peter Parker gets younger and younger. And that's why eventually even Tom Holland is going to pass off the Miles Morales, who's going to be 15, right? But I agree with you on that point. I'm glad you're pushing back on that. Which
is why it's deep, that because we get an old Roosevelt in your book,
right?
Yeah, you defy the convention,
right?
In that, in aging him, and it goes against what the original convention is supposed to be.
Right.
Right. All right. So I have more.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this feels like this is working because I have my crazy questions and then it brings up other stuff. So this is good. So this conversation with him having this transition with the writers, where at first he sees them as white men who were writers and he's not engaged and he doesn't have any there's like no real interaction. But then he starts hanging with them and he starts engaging with them personally on set, off set, writing meetings. And then they stop becoming writers and stop becoming white men and start becoming people with names who he feels like he has like real relationships with, right? Like real friendships, real conversations.
Now, you know
I was curious about that.
You know where I get that from? I get that
from
Saturday
Night Live. That's why I asked.
I get that from Saturday Night Live. James Brown's Hot Tub was the white writers going to Eddie Murphy saying, "We got something for you that's great." And Eddie Murphy was like, "Nah, that's not going to work." They said, "Try it." And it works. Black people leave Saturday Night Live because their white writer leaves. Like the one Punky, her name is, her writer left. And she was like, "Okay."
Garrett Morris said something similar. He said,
"I don't have a champion." Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just that. Sorry, it's just like I remember Garrett Morris saying, the first black player on that show, said the same thing. Like he had a hard time. He had to find his way to find the white writers that would write for him in a way, and then they would come and go. And he was like, he got stuck. I mean, it was like a whole, it's crazy. So yeah, sorry.
And the sister on there now who Ego, sister on there now, Ego, who got the big hit, with the Miss Aggie, where she pretended to be like this urban black comedian, and she held out the mic saying "men ain't," and then the crowd shouted "shit," which got him in trouble with the FCC. That was a white writer who wrote that for her. And see, so these relationships. I mean, so the white writer was sophisticated enough to know, because what they were doing was they were commenting on the other sister not being able to do the journalism luncheon. That was where the whole skit came about. And Ego said, I can do that. I can do the journalism luncheon. I don't have to talk politics. And that's how she brought out this stereotypical Miss Aggie. So it was a sophisticated view of how, if we go lowest common denominator, they'll let us speak. But if we go political and social, they don't want to hear us, right? So the commentary on that. But it was so funny in terms of what she did that it just took off and became a life of its own, particularly when the whole FCC thing popped in. But if I got that right, that was a white writer who did that.
But then Saturday Night Live does the same thing.
Well, no, it is Saturday Night Live. That's what I'm talking about.
But that's what I'm saying. But what you're saying they're making fun of, they do the same thing, right? You can't have a serious black voice, so it's only comedic at the lowest common denominator. And then if Godfrey is telling the truth, then they said they wouldn't let him be on there because they didn't want to ever have another Eddie Murphy who would be bigger than the show.
Let me explain two things. I've only read a little bit.
Is Godfrey the next Eddie Murphy? I don't know, but he thought so. He was told so.
I've only read a little bit about Saturday Night Live, so let me just say only the two things I know. One, Lorne Michaels is not political, and he tells his people, "I don't want any polemics on the show." That's why the cold open, you got to look really hard to get the politics of what they're trying to say out of it. That's why you got to look so hard. Two, Lorne Michaels did not hire Eddie Murphy for Saturday Night Live.
Correct.
Nick Ebersol did. Lorne Michaels would have never hired Eddie Murphy for Saturday Night Live and gave him the freedom he gave. No, you're absolutely correct on that second part. No way.
And I didn't learn that until I saw one of them documentaries
That's
recently.
right.
I said, "Oh
That's
shit!"
Right. That's why
Lorne had slipped out for a minute,
Lorne
and this dude
right.
hired Eddie.
That's right.
And that's why
right.
Godfrey was told there was never going to be another.
No, and because Keenan knows his role, and he's going to be there forever, right? Keenan knows his role. Keenan, as any young millennial will tell you, they grew up with their own version of Saturday Night Live called Keenan and Kel, right? Or It's All That, or whatever it was. Keenan's role, he's like in baseball, the what do you call like that fourth batter in baseball?
The cleanup.
Yeah,
no, I thought of him more as like the five. What do they call it? The 5-tool pitcher.
Okay, we can do that too. Keenan is sent into a skit when it's not working, and he makes it work.
Oh, I see.
And when a skit does work, he's sent in to make it funnier. And Keenan has so much power on the show because they even made fun of that one. They did one of those cold opens where Donald Trump interrupts something, and then Keenan walks away, and they're like, "Keenan, you can't walk away." He's like, "No, yes, I can. I'm Keenan. I can walk away," because Keenan had a sitcom. He was flying for like 3 years. I think it was the Carmichaels, whatever it was called. He was flying to LA doing this sitcom and then coming back on Friday, missing all of the rehearsals, all of the crazy stuff, and just showing up and still being on the show. Yeah, the closer, right. That's exactly what Keenan is, Spider-Man. Yes. So like, but Keenan knows like his job is not to be Eddie Murphy. His job is not to do that. He knows that. And so he comes in, he punches, he does the punch, people laugh, and then he moves on. And he does maybe 1 or 2 skits for the whole thing, and he collects a check. So no, he's not going anywhere.
That's fascinating.
All right, next question.
So next question. So and this is funny that I did not know this, and it just could be me not actually paying attention in the decades that I listened to WBLS. And I just wanted this came to me only because Air Doctor. WBLS was actually Black Liberation Station. Is that real? Or did you make that up?
That was its nickname. It was originally.
It was a nickname, but that was not what the actual name. Okay. In the street.
But keep in mind, WBLS was founded by a group of Black businessmen who thought they were radical at the time. Percy Sutton, Jesse Jackson Jr., etc. So maybe in their minds it was. I mean, they never literally said that because it used to be, because WBLS used to be WLIB FM.
Yeah. Right.
Now, what is true in the book is that WLIB was founded in World War II, and the LIB is for liberty.
Okay.
That is true. That's one of the true things about the book.
Oh, I need you to unpack that more. Who named it that though? The LIB.
The white people who founded it during World War II.
So is it part of like the Radio Free Project and all that?
And all of that.
Got it. Okay.
So this is different than the Pacifica at the same time, different thread.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So because so growing up in Brooklyn, WBLS was like the smooth station, right? So you listen to Kiss FM if you wanted the rap and then you listen to WBLS if you wanted to listen to the radio during dinner, right? Like it was like dinner, and then if you wanted to cross over, you listen to Z100, right?
You're gonna hate the scroll. You're gonna hate the scroll, but I need you to find an amazing article written about the rivalry between WBLS and Kiss. When Kiss was
I remember the rivalry.
I remember that.
I lived through that rivalry.
There's a huge article online. I forget what it's called. I make my students read it in Mass Media Minorities. There's my class that I teach at Seton Hall. I teach a class at Seton Hall that was created by Gil Noble. So I'm very proud of that fact. But there's this long article about the rivalry between BLS and Kiss that shows the whole behind the scenes and all of that, and you'll love it. You will absolutely love it. All of that.
I'm
Yep,
gonna
all
look
of
that
that.
up because I remember. I mean, that
Oh,
was a big thing. And
Yeah.
like people pick
all of
sides, right?
Right.
Like you
No,
were
they
either
did.
WBLS listener
They did.
or you were like it was a big like it was a. I remember this.
And
And
well,
never
that was
worries,
really
Andy. I fully remember Video Music Box.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody remembers
Fully
Uncle
remember
Ralph.
Video Music Box. So just
I was Uncle Ralph before he was Uncle Ralph. He was just Ralph.
Yes.
And by the way, that show is still on the air today.
The Video Music Box?
Yes. I've seen it recently. I've seen it in last year. It is still on the air today. Look it up. You'll find it listed on the airwaves. You won't find it on YouTube, but it's still on the airwaves. Find it. It's like in the middle of the morning on somewhere, whatever, but it's still there.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. All right. So here's another question for you.
Go right ahead.
There was a lot of, and it may be because of the time during which the majority of the story is happening, which is when he's working on Sesame Street in the 70s. There's a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of weed smoking. And I'm just curious, like, as you were writing that in, was that intended to be reflective of the times and a nod to how those things were flooded into the communities intentionally? Or was it just or did you not even think about it and it was just what the character told you to write?
Yes and no, because my book, see, one of the things I haven't mentioned about this book is that its format is my loving parody of the Black radical, how I came to be a Black radical book. So like I looked at Seize the Time, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, The Education of Sonny Carson, like those, like that was the model. I said, okay, I've got to, because when I was thinking about the model to use for Roosevelt, I said, okay, I got to use the Black Power memoir. So what I say in my press release on Medium about the book is that this is the last Black Power memoir. This is the lost and last Black Power memoir. So that's why I started the book with him being at his very lowest. And if you notice, okay, now I'm going to go geek. When you watch Harry Potter carefully, like really carefully, you find out that the hero of Harry Potter is not Harry Potter. The hero of Harry Potter is the other dude. I can't remember his name.
Ron.
Sorry?
Ron, the redhead?
No, not Ron. The one that was always to the side, who got real tall.
That's Ron, the redhead, his best
goofy
friend.
one. The goofy one. No, the goofy one that was always to the
Oh,
side.
with the teeth. Oh,
right.
Oh, yes.
I forget his name.
Bottom, long bottom.
Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom is the real hero of Harry Potter. When you watch it very carefully, Neville, right? So to show the growth and development that I wanted to show, if you notice, I take Baby Breeze, who I never name, who I never give his real name.
Right. And
I let you see his transformation from the lowest point, because he starts the novel. He starts the novel with Roosevelt. And then he grows into, he's shaped by the times, and he's shaped by the commitment that Children's Television Workshop gave him. So he becomes an entirely different person. And that's why he ends the book really more happier than Roosevelt does. He has a wife, he has a house that one of the white people gave him, right? Now, where did I get that from? I got that from, allegedly, that's how John Henry Clark got that house. And somebody white gave him that house. Like a white leftist gave him that house, allegedly, right? Or what I remember. So like I slip all of this stuff in because, like I said, a lot of this stuff was just in the back of my mind and I needed to purge it. And so I took Baby Breeze as a side character and let you see his whole development. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed having this like side character that we could see transformed by the times. Now, Mill, of course, is a casualty. And by the way, Mill is the nickname of my oldest nephew, Andrew Burroughs Jr., the filmmaker. So I enjoyed taking his nickname and turning him into the, ignorant thug who he's killed. Right? He's a little annoyed about it. He's a little annoyed about that. Beezy is based on his friend Bees, who was a reverend and who did live in Newark. So like that character, the Reverend Bees character, is a tribute actually to my nephew's friend. So that's where another character comes from.
Interesting. So that actually leads me to another question, which is,
Okay.
and this is the question that's going to make both Intume and Jared go, oh, here she go. But I have to ask it.
No, ask it.
The role of religion.
Yes.
Because it plays a small but yet definitive role, because there's so many like distinct things that Roosevelt goes through that are in a church or when he's talking with so like I'm curious about the decisions you made, even like with Islam, like the decisions that you made with regard to like those little snippets. Is it just, I mean, is it in part because obviously like religion plays such a role when you look at like Black folks and and how things, you know, the role that plays just in general? Was there something else you were thinking about? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I am a person of faith, but I consider myself kind of a ecumenical African, you know, whatever. In other words, Christianity, Islam, you know, it's all the connection to spirit for me, right? So it won't surprise you. Well, it won't surprise Jared, but it may not surprise you that I use religion and Star Trek, which is also a big theme of the book. Star Trek is a big theme of the book.
Yes, it is.
As a way to beat the reader over the head with the message so that I can move on to other things. So when Bees says that Bible verse in the beginning, that's the message of the book. The message of the whole book is that Bible verse in there. And when the sister gets addicted to Star Trek, and I point out the 2 times Kirk said on Star Trek, what do you think? We are here to survive? No, we're not here to survive. We're here to explore. Whether we survive or not is almost not relevant. And that he says, and you can find like that's that line I can't find online. I can't, and I don't want to watch all 78 episodes of Star Trek to find it. But the line you can find on YouTube is when he says, "Risk is our business. We are out here to risk." And so I wanted all the characters to be involved in risk and to see what would happen. And so when you risk during a transformative period, weird things happen. You run into Amsterdam news ads and white ladies change your life. You record albums. You know, you do all these things that you never thought you would do. You write songs, and all of a sudden, you know, your brother has an album coming out, and the sister gets to use a song. So all of that, like when they all have that party and they start talking, and when Baby Breeze gets emotional, and Matt Robinson has to remind him, no, we're all getting these new experiences. It's not just you. This is all new to us as well. I wanted to point out that all of that happens as a result of our movements, but I try not to say that directly because it's just too pedestrian if I say it directly. But they have to respond to it. It's 1970. They got to 71. They've got to respond to, like, we're getting all this stuff because of the movements. So I thought throwing religion and Star Trek in and having it play the same role was a way to get the actual message of the novel out so that we can focus then on the novel and not focus on the message.
Interesting. So since I know your history with Star Trek, I had no questions about that being like, I was not shocked at all to see that to be part of the storyline. I wasn't actually shocked about the religion either, but I was just curious about it. And so 2 more, and then we can stop with my list, because I think for the most part
it's 133. You can do more.
I'm feeling satisfied with feeling like I understand all the things that were behind it.
Okay.
So this is a random question, but I was like, wait, is this a real thing? So is there I mean, I assume there's a real movie called I Am Legend that had Charlton, right? Now,
yes.
Is it the same storyline as the Will Smith version, or is that a whole different?
That's a Dr. Gann question.
They're a bit different. I have not seen the Heston movie in a long time. I can't really speak to how much they did. I mean, essentially the Will Smith movie is a remake, but I'd have to actually revisit it. Maybe the chat would know, as I haven't looked at the Heston movie in a long time.
I never even knew Heston did that. So Heston did that and the Soylent Green joint. He was in a whole bunch and the Star Trek. Wasn't he in the original Star Trek or one of them? Wasn't that him?
I don't remember Heston in the original Star Trek. I don't remember.
He wasn't the original one who realizes he's.
Sorry, it's called Omega Man. Is the original?
Oh, but it's noted in the story that it was that the name was either changed. Or I don't know if it was a author's note, but I caught that it was that
because the book is I Am Legend, and then Omega Man is the movie they made, and then when they made the remake, it's it is I Am Legend. I don't know if it's one of those.
I did. This is what I meant. I'm sorry. This is what I meant. Planet of the Apes.
Planet Apes, right?
What did I say? I don't think I said that, but that's what. I meant Planet of the Apes. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And because the only movie of his that I've actually ever seen that he in its entirety is Michael Moore's film, where Moore shows up at his house and exposes him as an NRA.
Funny.
We said the mixing of the races is the reason why. When he says that, I was like, "Oh,
that's funny."
All my issues with Michael Moore, I gotta say, that's one of the most G moments.
That was funny to me.
G. Said the mixing of the races. I said, "Ooh."
I watched all the Planet of the Apes movies 1 week. I took a week once and did that, and I forgot how powerful Planet of the Apes was and Logan's Run was before Star Wars. And it always goes back, there's to me, it's a famous scene in that 70s show when the gang goes to see Star Wars for the first time, and Kelso says, well, it can't be better than Planet of the Apes. And I was laughing because I was like, right, that's what people were thinking. Because
speaking of that, anybody, my bad. Anybody on that show is original cast, not a criminal? Just throwing. I feel like everybody on that 70s show has ended up either in prison or should be in prison or
more than
was at a Diddy party.
It was like half of them. Half of them got in a lot of trouble. Mila Kunis didn't, but Mila Kunis lied to get on that 70s show. She said she was 16, she was only 14.
Yikes.
And she said Ashton Kutcher was the first person to ever kiss her. Because that's how young she was.
Well, they also co-wrote a shady letter in defense of the dude that's in prison forever.
Yeah.
The Scientology guy, right?
Yeah. And then
what about
Kush
the lead?
Was hanging with Diddy a lot. I don't know, man.
I don't think Topher was, but yeah.
I think Topher ran away. He's like,
he ran away. He ran away.
I'm good.
And Topher, by the way, was the one not chosen to be the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That's why they let him come in to be Eddie Brock and Venom in Spider-Man 3. He was almost Spider-Man. He would have been Spider-Man had Tobey not done it, probably.
All right. So my last notes. I want to shout you out for some things that are now forever going to be ingrained in my brain.
Well, wait a minute. Are you finished with your questions yet?
Yeah, my questions are done. But I am going to yell at you after I tell you the things that I'm going to shout you out. I'm shouting out because I have an issue.
You want to yell?
You're not going to be shocked by the issue because it's an issue that I'm always yelling at you about.
You want to yell at me first? Let's get the yell out of the way. Yell at me first.
So, so you make some references to some folks, the Pops.
I knew this was coming.
There's a lot of talk about Trump, but no talk about the Democrats being an equal pain in the ass. LeBron James is mentioned for the NBA strike that he actually was the person who stopped it happening, right? So boo him.
And you know who got LeBron to stop it, right?
I know it was Obama.
Yeah,
I know. Oh, I'm well aware. But also, the question for me is, did he really get him to stop it, or was that you know, oh, I'm good. I didn't actually want to do anything that was going to be beneficial to the majority of Black people anyway. So I'm all good with like saying, oh, Obama called me in because people.
Right,
Oh,
right.
well, go ahead and to make
No,
up.
I've always read it that way, that LeBron wanted to stop it, so he called Barack to help
Interesting.
Find a way to
because he
stop
couldn't.
it.
Interesting.
People like Paul George and them were like, they were
Interesting.
done. They were
Right.
done.
Interesting.
And they brought Barack in to kind of, it's like none of them were going to argue with Obama.
By the way, someone's asking me in the chat about Sharp James. Sharp James was the quintessential Newarker because he had humble beginnings. He got power. He was corrupt who did good things. And that's how Newarkers judge our mayors. You know, we don't care whether they're corrupt. We care whether they do good things, right?
And so this is where you get yelled at. Right?
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Because Todd and I have this ongoing fight in email and text message about whether or not you should give people cookies for doing the shit they're supposed to do. Right? So if at the core of your work, you're a corrupt asshole who's not actually doing anything that in the end is going to fully like materialize as beneficial for the majority of people, right? Like, I don't want to give you a cookie because you did like these few small things that like, that like they look good in appearance and maybe on the outside, right? Or maybe if you don't dig too far in to see what else is happening underneath. So I take real issue with giving people cookies. Now, Todd's argument, and I could be wrong. It could just be my own, like, I just don't like a lot of people. And so I wear that and I eat it and I'm okay being that person. And Todd has always, responded to me and said, but you have to look at the things that have been done that are beneficial. And so this is like our ongoing fight about Newark.
Let me help you out, Renee, and then we're going to get back to the book. I'm going to help you out. You're not going to like it, but that's okay because you and Josie at Public Square, you keep thinking you have to like things. I'm telling you, no, you don't have to like these things. But I got to tell you the facts as they are. Newark and Jersey City are controlled by mobs. They've been controlled by mobs for almost 100 years. They're mobs. Menendez is about to go to jail if Trump doesn't pardon him in about 3 weeks. And he was the mob. He was the political mob boss of Hudson County. If you go read Ron Parambo's book on the rebellion, No Cause for Indictment, an Autopsy of Newark, Newark was the only city in the United States directly controlled by the mob. Directly. The mayor Adonisio could have been a congressman, but he said the problem with being a congressman, this is how long ago this was that you couldn't make money at it. He said, but you could make $1 million being the mayor of Newark because you could get all this graft, right? So when the rebellion happened, and I can't talk about Jersey City, but when the rebellion happened, white people moved up to the county. Okay, then they became the county government. I was just about to get there, Andy. And there's a whole show about the whites who moved up to the county called The Sopranos, a documentary series that pretends to be a fictional piece. And they cut the deal with the local Black Power radicals, Baraka and all of them, that, okay, you're going to run the city and we're going to run the county. So just like we did graft, but did good for our Italians, now you're going to get graft and we're going to get part of that graft, and you're going to do good things for your Black people. Now, if you don't like that, Renee, don't write about Newark because that's what it is.
But it's not. But it's not. So this is where we disagree.
And the difference
because if you look at the people in Newark,
yes,
the unemployment,
yes,
the unhoused,
yes,
the lack of housing,
yes,
so tell me
and
why we're giving
50 years ago, Renee. And when you start reading the history of Newark, you'll see that. That's what I keep telling you and Josie over and over again. I'm going to continue to tell you that. You don't like it. Well, that's okay. But I'm telling you,
it's not about not liking it. I am talking about the material, factual conditions of the people right now.
And I'm saying that if you ask a Newarker or 5 Newarkers, they're going to talk about, oh, we got a new ShopRite. Oh, Mayor Gibson was the first mayor in the country to give us sickle cell shots. Sharp James, as corrupt as he went, Sharp James went to jail But Sharp James gave us New Jersey Pack. Sharp James gave us the Prudential.
Okay, but you're still missing my point. Why are we giving cookies for that? This is my question. Because see, so here's my issue with Todd.
Go ahead.
Is in giving cookies to those things, you are ignoring the very real problematic material conditions of the majority of people.
Then I'm going to suggest that you form an organization.
Well, I'm doing that.
And like the people you don't like, and like the people you don't like, meet every Thursday for 40 years and listen to them and follow.
No, I don't want to do that. No, that's why I don't go to them damn meetings. That's
I know that,
happening.
But I'm just telling you, in Newark, you become a leader by getting on the Board of Education, the City Council,
and doing nothing,
and move your way. I'm telling you to become a leader here. If you don't like it, that's okay.
But being a leader and getting nothing done,
that's your interpretation.
That is the material conditions of people.
I'm giving you a Newark interpretation that you don't like.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
That's okay.
Okay. So we're gonna pull numbers. We're gonna pull numbers. And we're going to look at numbers.
Because we can go back to how Newark was in poverty.
No. I don't want to talk about before. I'm talking about right now.
And I want
us to look at the numbers right now of the amount of people who are unhoused, the amount of people who do not have jobs, the amount of people who are underemployed, the amount of people who have problematic, like literally, right?
Yes.
And I want to understand. Because it's not about like or dislike. I want to understand why I should give cookies to things when all of these other things are still in existence.
Renee, then go ask Newarkers why they support their corrupt leaders. Then go ask them and then listen to them. Because you're talking about cookies like your cookies matter. They don't. What matters is what people in Newark and in Jersey City and cities like that think. Go ask them. Why do you support Rocker?
You're still missing my question. You're still missing my question.
I'm your question directly.
No, you're not, because maybe I'm not clear with my question.
Yeah.
My question is, why is it that people who have the capacity of discussing here are the real other problems, right?
Yeah.
So for me, part of the reason that people focus on it, and this is not just Newark, this is in general, right? The reason people are able to say, oh, but this, but that, but this, but that, is because it's allowed. No one pushes back, right? Like people allow these conversations to happen where I use the term give cookies because it's like the easiest way to say it, right? It's not really, I don't know if it's really the best way to term it, but so that conversation is allowed, and then people just let it live and let it breathe, and nobody ever says, okay, but what about all the what about all the things, right? So that's why I always ask you the question.
Well, this is your show, so I'd like to go back to the book, but I'm going to give you an answer that you won't like, and then we can go back to the book if you want to, or we can continue to talk about this.
No, because I still haven't told you the things that are going to live with me because they're so good. Yeah.
Well, hold on. So Kwame Kilpatrick, son of a congressperson, mayor of Detroit, another Black Power city, had all the power in the world and misused it. Decided to act like he was Diddy. Got in trouble like he was Diddy. Went to jail like he was Diddy. And is a disgrace. Okay? And he did not use that power to make Detroit any better. He did not. Whether we like Sharp James, Ken Gibson, Cory Booker, even though Cory Booker did a lot of messed up things, and you want to talk about angry, I'm angry about why didn't y'all run Cory Booker out of town when they took that $200 million and didn't give it to the people? It all went to the consultants, right? And there's a whole book on that, right? I'm like, y'all should have ran him out of town. Now, I asked some Newarkers, some prominent Newarkers, why didn't y'all run out of town? And then they started listing all the good things he did. Well, we did this. Well, we did that. Well, we did this. So our standards, here's where I agree with you. Our standards are so low that so low because the corruption is so easy to do and not do services that when somebody does something right, you call it a cookie. We call it, oh, now we finally have good government. So, for instance, let's talk 1 minute. Let's just talk for 1 minute about the street theater that's been happening in the city over the last.
Whew, Lord.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. If Trump was not a straight up white racist, white nationalist, I would have thought the whole thing was set up, right? It was clearly set up that the Congress people were going to make the confrontation so that somebody goes to jail, right?
Right.
That was,
right.
So that was all, and it was all made up. You saw it was all staged.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's all PR.
Right.
Yeah.
So we agree with that. Okay. But here's where we're going to disagree. To Black people in Newark, I don't know about elsewhere. I don't know about Harlem. I don't know about Detroit. I don't know about that. For Black people in Newark, that was an example of that's why we vote for our leaders.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I
know you do. They confronted the enemy.
Yeah. Oh no.
Not, they confronted the enemy.
Right.
And that's what we care about. Are you representing us?
Right.
So if you're confronting our enemies, that is representing us, whether it's theater or not. See?
Right.
And that's why we need sophisticated writing to say, okay, it's both.
Right. Because to me, if it's theater, it's not really true representation. It's theater.
I know you would think that.
Right. And so, but this is just my own that's just my own fundamental disagreement with what things matter and what things don't matter. But so it's all good, but I appreciate it.
Right. But I'm saying that it's theater that worked because everybody won. See, that's the other.
But did they win because Delaney's still open, and there's people in there,
and there's more going down there and protesting, and that's become a national issue now. And the New Jersey Globe says they're about to arrest the Congresswoman, LaMonica.
I hear you, but I still ask the question of if Delaney is still open,
yes,
and there are still people in there,
yes,
is there a win?
Well, that's a complicated question because Baraka he's not in charge of Delaney. He can't even get in to do the inspection that he wants to do to close it down, that's why they want
actually that's not true. According to Baraka, he had already done his inspection and gone in. It was after he came back out that he got arrested. Right. But so see, that's not true.
But the point I'm making is it's federal land and he doesn't have control over it. So what is he doing? He's confronting them.
Is it federal land? Because it's privately owned.
Yeah, because it's
privately owned.
Well, I'm sorry, it's privately owned, but it's used for a federal purpose.
Right, but it's not federal land. It's a privately owned building being run to support a federal project.
But the bottom line is he is confronting them. And for us, not you, not Josie, for us, that's important.
That's interesting. And I just want to point out, like somebody was like, Renee just doesn't like it. She thinks it's wrong. I never said Todd was wrong. Have I said the words Todd, you're wrong at all? We have a disagreement, and I'm trying to understand Todd's point of view, which is why I keep asking the questions that I'm asking.
And that's why
I'd appreciate it if people would stop doing this whole Renee just be doing whatever and she she be wilding and
when you do the reading and you see how low our standards are, when you do that reading,
that's a great answer. That is a
reading,
great
you see how low our standards are, you're going to understand it.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Because see, what are we celebrating? We're celebrating that Baraka did all the things he was supposed to do and he didn't get indicted. Because there's always a third term in which a Newark mayor or whatever gets indicted or goes to jail or something like that.
That's hysterical. Well, not yet, at least.
Right, and that's why that Vindicator article that will never be discussed again about all the corrupt people under Baraka, right? That's why that Vindicator article was so important. But see, now that's been wiped away. Why? Because we challenged the white man.
Right. It's fascinating.
That is both, and this is where I'll agree with you. It's both retrograde and understandable.
Right. Interesting.
All right. So
now your flowers.
Let's get into
I appreciate you going down this road with me though, because this is something we don't often get to talk about. Huh?
No, you're an award-winning writer. I want you to win more awards, but I just want you to understand where you're at.
Well, but the other thing is, and I think this is important for people to understand who are watching. Sure. I do not live in Newark, right? I don't live in Newark now. I've never lived in Newark. Right. I grew up in Brooklyn. I didn't even grow up in Jersey. I barely knew that Jersey was a thing until I was in college. So, let me make sure that that's just very, very, very clear.
And I want to make it clear that I'm not saying Newark is better or worse than any other city. I just know Newark.
Yeah. I just know. And honestly, I I think if you go into the majority of places, what you find in Newark, you're going to find in a lot of other places.
Everywhere.
I don't think it's
Everywhere.
necessarily like unique to
Everywhere.
Newark, right? Like,
Right.
but because you're there, we like to have
Right.
this argument.
We're
I
focusing
wanted
on
to make
Newark
sure I
because
said it.
Newark is where we're focused on.
Right.
And now
with the
that
book.
Newark is in the news, this discussion is even more important than ever.
I agree.
But when you read the stuff, when you read those books,
yeah, because I have my list. I have my list, my reading list. I
right, and believe me, we'll have a lot of discussions about it. But let's get to the other stuff.
And I also want to say, so in Tume, you mentioned the brain drain thing, right? Like the going to Jersey and grabbing the people and taking the mines and all these things. I want to say also that I feel like the reason things are not revolutionary in places like Newark now is because all of those people got snatched up, got pulled into the system where they became, kind of invested in doing the thing, right? Becoming the representation, being the voice, getting the bag, doing all these things. So then they all so now you're left with this void. Because the people who really would have done something are no longer invested in doing that thing, right? So we have, I've been meeting with these groups and we have very interesting conversations about this gap that seems to be in existence in Newark, right? Like this, like literal, like it's like there were all these things and,
But you know why the gap exists in Newark though?
Listening.
Because bougie and radical people have never wanted to live here. They want to live in New York. That's why. So Baraka and C-Fund represent the radicals of Newark. And when we say from Newark, we're saying one generation or maybe no generation removed from the South. These are working class people who came from the South who had nothing, right? So they radicalize under Baraka and they get access for the first time. And they become corrupt because for the first time they're making $80,000 a year. So they're like, I want to make more. Let's make more. And that's how they go to jail,
Right.
So there is no radical class in Newark that was arrested in jail. There's no Black Panther 21 or whatever in Newark.
Right.
We did have a Black Panther party. It was the police bombed it. Now we can say that.
Yeah.
Right. But we've never had. See, there is no elite class here. There's no Cornell West here. Like we don't have that kind of stuff. Right. It's why I left, Renee. It's why I went to Maryland. Because I was like, I don't want to cover Larry Hamill on Springfield Avenue for the rest of my life. And that's what the Star Ledger was offering. So I was like, no, I'm going to go to grad school. And that's how I met people like Jared. And I got involved in the intellectual culture and, that kind of stuff. Because I was like, I can't do that. Because this place is a small town. You see only 10,000 people are ever involved in civic activity. And you know that when they opened the vote up to the 16-year-olds for the school board, what was it, about 67?
Yeah.
Out of 5,000 people. So there's always been that apathy here. But see, that's where somebody like a Cory Booker could come to town and take advantage of that and say, okay, I'm going to pull some Gandhi stunts and, and work his way up. And who was Cory Booker's nemesis? Ras Baraka.
Right.
But then God had to intervene and Frank Lautenberg went off to Cory, Senator Lautenberg. And then everybody got what they wanted. Now they're all pretending they're friends, which is ridiculous. We know that's ridiculous.
It's wild. It is
and
wild.
That's part of the Black power corruption that is Newark. But let's get to the other stuff.
So, all right. So here are the flowers. And I like Jared's barely said a word. So I feel like but I was this book was.
I knew it was going to piss you off.
Y'all need to read this thing, y'all. Like,
I knew it was going. I said, Renee, it's not going to like the ending. And I knew this was coming.
Yeah, I was mad at you at the end.
I was ready. I was
like, this mother. But I love you though. But I love you, so it's all.
Renee, you're going to win a lot of awards because I'm going to show you where all the skeletons are buried. You're going to win so many awards. Trust me.
All right, so one.
The guys, I sent Renee like an email list of all the people in Newark that went to jail in the last 30 years for corruption. So it's not like I'm some rah-rah defender of the city. I'm not. I just know the city because that's where I'm from. Yeah. Anyway, but go ahead, Renee.
All right, so TB is about to, I think we should do shirts. The powers that be. I think we should make shirts that say that because I just like, it's kind of like how I tell my son sometimes you're a PETA. And he looks at me and I go, you're a pain in the ass. You're a PETA. right?
Oh wow!
And
Oh
so
wow!
Peter
Wow.
works out great because nobody ever knows what you're actually saying. It's fantastic. I love that the theory behind Franklin's school, Roosevelt School, was that being in a classroom of Black people who are loud and energetic does not equal undisciplined. That
Exactly.
was fantastic because I was like, it is such a, the angry Black person trope, right? Like it's such a misunderstanding of the energy and the force that people bring sometimes into a space, right? That it's seen as undisciplined and all these things, but the reality is it's just like you feel it, right? And it has no choice but to come out the way that it comes out.
Exactly.
I love all.
What
Go
was
ahead.
the issue back then? Black English. Remember scholars on the call here? From Black English, that was 70s. And it was updated in the 90s. It was called Ebonics then, but back then it was called Black English. And
Now it's AAVE.
Right.
What is it?
Right.
AAVE. Vernacular English. Yeah.
Right.
So I wanted to show that no, they were being themselves. And of course, that was the problem.
Right. And it's okay, because that was the other thing that I have written down.
Because the parents
is that
kicking him out, the Black parents
are the ones who kicked him out. Right.
Kicking him out. It's true.
Right.
That's when I knew I had to write something. I said, I got to write something on this.
Right. And that was one of the things I have quoted. There was nothing wrong with them.
Right.
Like teaching kids, like it's okay to be who you are. There's nothing wrong with you as you are.
Right. And that's what those kids show. Right.
Right. I love all this. There were just so many names that you just kind of threw out there. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is exactly what you want to see is like, we're going to throw out Shirley Chisholm, like sending a note, right? About how important the work is.
That was not true. I wish it was true.
Okay.
But
so things like that.
In the notes, but it is true when you see in the notes where a small child says, "Where is Roosevelt Franklin? I miss him."
Right. Okay. So see, this is it. Another shirt, and Jared now knows because he's ordered all of them now that we have the shop open. Okay. When I helped to design the I Mix What I Like shirts, the quote "Peace only if you're willing to fight for it" is on the shirt.
Right.
Because Jared never ends a show without saying that. And I felt like it was like it had to be there, right? So now I want to start saying all the time, the problem with the truth is once you hear it, you can't unhear it.
And whose words did I put that in?
It was somebody talking to Roosevelt.
I think I put that in Professor Mashaw's mouth.
Yes. It was when he went to yes. And he says the problem with the truth is when you hear it, you can't unhear it. And it's something that I live with, right? Like I talk all the time to people about like people who get to live in the bubble and not acknowledge the craziness that's happening in the world because they live in their bubble.
Right.
And but knowing like once you burst the bubble, you can't put it back together. That bad boy's done. Like it's there's no.
And now you know why. And now you know why I had to empty my head of all of that.
Yeah.
See, because I was still walking around with it, and I was like, no, you're about to be 60. You gotta let this go.
Yeah.
And so I let it go, but I put it in a place where I could always find it.
Yeah. But
just quickly,
go ahead.
The merch is available, and the link I was just displaying is at blackliberationmedia.org. So you can find that in the show description and then just click store and it takes you right there. So you can get, please
all the things.
Avail yourself and get all the things.
I know I'm about to have mad mugs in my house because all the mugs.
Yeah, I have I'm gonna have a whole bunch of mugs. I'm great with I'm great for the summer. My summer gear is it's gonna be all set.
I was very excited that Jared liked his shirt design, FYI.
I think you did what you did was dope. And Now we just need to get some bucket hats and what
Bucket
is that
hat,
on the,
yeah. I'm into
and
that
pinwheel hats. We need the Todd special edition pinwheel hat.
Jared, this is the memory. I don't want to.
But I would like a bucket hat though. I would like some bucket hats.
We can do a bucket hat. We can do a bucket hat. They have them.
Yeah,
We can do
yeah,
it. We can do
yeah.
it.
This is a memory. This goes back how old we are because we go back 25 years now. I remember us being at a restaurant and you were doodling logos for yourself for Vox Union.
Yeah.
So I know it means a lot to you to have these kind of representations.
Well,
and what they mean. Not just for representation, but for what they mean, the symbolism of that. And so I'm very happy again that you have this collective and you have these brilliant people like the current and future award-winning Renee and Dr. Gant and all of these folks, because this is
though he apparently is such a disappointment to so many of his former peers. Like though I've run into a couple like that too. They're like, well, I remember specifically, well, what are you going to do with an Africana like they were like Africana studies? Why? That was always a big question. Like, why would you? What a waste. And I had such high hopes for you, and I was like, I'm good. Like,
we thought you were going to be Michael Eric Dyson, Jared.
Do you remember? You weren't at that meeting, Dr. Burroughs, but I made it. One of my Office Minutes episodes was when our former dean said that to me. He said, Dr. Ball, you could be our Michael Eric Dyson or Cornell West, but you cannot do it in my school.
And can I add something to that? Can I add a Jared story to that?
Yes.
I'm sure you might not remember, but he has told this story before. When Cornell West came to Morgan, he said, Queen did this whole West thing. Oh, it's so great. And I'd like to thank, and there's Jared Ball. I'd like to thank Jared Ball, and then everybody else. He named check Jared. I was like, so it was like the president, the vote, Jared, and then he said, everybody else here that does amazing work.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not going to front. That was a nice little moment because you could feel the unspoken reverberating impact of that. But yeah.
But that's
he came to MSU for $5,001. $5,000.
And I'm sure that was the Negro college rate. I'm sure that's not his real rate.
Oh, I'm sure 5,000 is way light. Oh, and I'm sure it was made way more than 5011.
I mean, who wrote the 1619 project?
Nicole Hannah Jones.
Yeah.
Her rate is 40.
Mm-hmm.
Her rate is 40.
More power to her.
And Tavis was very proud at the height of his popularity that he was, finally in, that 5-figure range for speaking. He was very proud of that.
Wild.
I want to say one thing. So someone said, I wasn't trying to jab at Jared with that Dyson one. I'm actually trying to make a point. So I have a long beef with Anthony Mackie back when I was an actor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I think I might have said with we might have talked about it. Maybe.
Man, my memory's terrible.
Actually,
I feel like I
it's a
remember
one-sided
this
beef.
one.
I never had beef with the brother. The brother liked to be underhanded with me. I don't mind saying it publicly, whatever. I don't care. He probably never going to hear this, whatever. Anyway, they like to bring up his name because people who know the thing that we had back in the aughts, they want to bring up his name to me when they talk about why I have not completed their hopes and dreams, because they know there's like an extra, you know what I'm saying? I'm always kind of like, come on, man. In what world did I ever want to be Anthony Mackie?
First of all, I'm not thrilled with I'm glad, I don't find him to be a powerhouse actor. I've never thought he was an amazing performer. And the other question, though, that people always forget, even if he is amazing, is that there's only one. Like, how many? They act like there's going to be room for an Anthony and Mtume and this and that and that. There's only going to be a handful anyway. There's only going to be a handful of white men, for that matter, that are really making big money in movies. So it's like this.
Yeah, people forget that before Chadwick Boseman died, everybody was joking about Chadwick Boseman's going to play every black historic role in the United States. Remember, he was everybody. He was James Brown. He was Thurgood Marshall. He was Jackie Robinson. So no, you're right. I mean, we know that. We know that.
But it's always been that. Again, even in the white world, it's always been that way. I remember, I always used to quote it because it was like that book I read years ago that said in the 90s, like 40% of all the revenue in Hollywood was from films with like 9 actors.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and then the rest. And I don't think any of them were black. I don't think Denzel might have made it on that list.
Samuel Jackson.
No, I don't think he was. Not in the 90s. Not by then. Not then.
Sorry,
this is too old for him. He hadn't popped off yet.
He'd be on that list now. He'd be near the top.
He'd be on that list now. But look at he's played himself in every movie. When has he? Again, I'm not thrilled. Like where's the range in his work? Like
so did Wayne, so did Elvis. I mean, it's a tradition.
John Wayne as the Mongolian what's my man's name? That was hilarious. I just saw a clip of it too. Somebody was making fun of it. And he's supposed to be what's my man's name? Genghis Khan, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like they got him in the mustache and the tanning, whatever, and the hat, and he's like, I'm here, way Pilgrim, I'm gonna conquer.
Right.
I mean, that's the function of the movie star.
Dr. Gann, I wanted to say one thing about disappointment. Even though I publicly rag on my own career, and I've done that more than once in this space, right? Because I grew up where I grew up, and I was surrounded by people like Gil Noble, Gary Bird, etc. People used to walk around in undergrads, like these baby boomers used to walk. They say, these black baby boomers say, they walked around as undergrads and they all had the Autobiography of Malcolm X like on their person, right, in their backpack or whatever, right? I walked around in my undergrad with Gil Noble's Black is the Color of My TV Tube. And what I never forgot about going to hear Gil Noble speak, because he lived in Montclair, so he was always around, right? Always speaking somewhere, is that he always said, they were disappointed in me. Now, let me tell you how deep the disappointment went. I did my doctoral dissertation partly on Gil Noble. He's a cover story in a 1991 Village Voice article written by Philip Nobile. Philip Nobile, the white guy who would expose how Alex Haley made all that stuff up about, his family and all that. You know who's quoted in the Philip Nobile article saying Gil was supposed to be bigger than all of us? A guy by the name of Geraldo Rivera.
Wow.
He said Gil was supposed to be bigger than all of us. And Gil himself said, I looked the way they wanted us to look. I spoke the way they wanted them to speak. I dressed the way they wanted me to dress. But they were upset with me because I didn't think the way they thought I should think.
Mm-hmm.
To see where Rivera is today, to think that he even knew that man's name is crazy.
But Geraldo was a young lord.
Right, he was the lawyer.
Yeah,
he was
that's what I'm saying.
He was the lawyer.
Oh, I understand. My bad. I got confused with what you were saying. But okay.
Gil Noble, Melba Tolliver, Geraldo Rivera, they all got their jobs at the same time. Again, Renee, this goes back to the history we're talking about. How this history has repeated itself. And they said Gil was going to be the star out of everybody.
Wow.
Now, and you know why I relate to that, Dr. Gann? But when you were in the hat when they said it was that's funny. But you know why I relate to that, Dr. Gann? Because guess who else was supposed to be huge on television media and rejected it? This young guy by the name of Wes Cook, who got an African name from one of his high school teachers. Because his high school teacher gave everybody in the class African names. So Wes Cook got named by this teacher Mumia. Mumia did a tryout on local Philadelphia television where he interviewed Dr. J. You can find the picture. Mumia's got his head covered and he's interviewing Dr. J. He turned down what would have been a 6-figure job back then because he wouldn't cut his dreads.
And this is back to our life lesson about you can't speak truth and become a millionaire.
You can't be rich and famous and radical all at the same time.
All at the same time, correct.
Did I get it right?
Salute, yeah, you got it right. Salute to the troublemakers and salute to the disappointers, the disappointment club. That's what we need.
Salute to the disappointers. Yeah.
The disappointers. But listen, before we leave though, I
just want to say you're in great company. If someone is disappointed in you, you're in great company, because what that means is you actually have your mind. And you did not give up your mind the way Oprah Winfrey gave up her mind at the same time when Mia was developing his. And that's why I do a lecture on comparing the two of them. I'm sorry, Dr. Ball.
No, that's great. I was just gonna say before we leave, I gotta play this. I gotta play this for Renee, and make sure that she sees this, and let folks know to be get ready for a couple weeks from now. But check this out here.
Yeah, we're going synergy. We're going 100% synergy right now. I'll answer whatever questions Renee wants to answer. But Renee, if you're watching this, May 31st, Saturdays with Renee, I Mix What I Like. Bring some of this up and let's talk more about it. But it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Jared, I'm always.
All right.
Wow.
Eugene coming through. Love it.
There you go.
Look, I did one webinar with Eugene, and they asked him something before they asked me, and I was like, "Why y'all do me like that?"
I don't know what's worse though. I've had to speak before him. I had to to open up, and I guess I suppose that's better. But to be forgotten by the end of the evening is a little humbling. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you speak first and then he goes last, it's like, who was the other guy? Who was that?
And y'all, for the record, I will say this again: never stand next to Hiram when Eugene is talking, because Hiram just loses his
Hiram's a troublemaker.
Mind. I can't mess with him.
Hiram is the one. Hiram is the kid that got me in trouble throughout my whole school career. They say something, I laugh, I get caught.
You get caught.
And I'd be like, you motherfucker, you.
But I just want to say before we go, I mean, again, I always say this, and Jared gets annoyed and he starts saying I'm full of shit or whatever. But the only reason I know so many of you who do such great work is because of Jared. Because Jared is always out here and he's always introducing me to people like Renee, like you, and to me. I didn't know who you were until just a few months ago. And I started listening to you. I was like, okay, this guy's too deep, man. I got to handle this. I got to pay attention, right? And Renee, you have such strength and fire and all that. And I just want to thank all of you for allowing, somebody like me, a non-activist, a non-revolutionary. I'm a comic-loving, Doctor Who-loving geek, who tries to have an intelligent analysis. I just want to thank you all for letting me do that and letting me be a peer to you. Because I think more and more, and Renee, we're going to have to argue while we fight. I think more and more with our enemies coming for us, we might have to put some of our arguments to the side. And that's a Newark philosophy. That's a Baraka philosophy. So we can fight about it. But we might have to put some of our arguments about each other to the side and deal with this threat. And then come back to the arguments or go deal with the arguments privately, because they are coming for us. So I just wanted to thank all of you for this space. And I really appreciate all of you. And I look forward to, continuing to help Josie Gonzalez with the amazing Public Square Amplified. I look forward to helping Renee win some awards, more awards for Public Square Amplified. Jared doesn't need me to win any awards. Jared just shows up and gets awards, And I get the feeling that Dr. Gann has turned down awards. I get the feeling he's turned down awards or turned down the thinking that would have resulted in awards. So I just wanted to thank all of you for that.
Well, I appreciate your humility, and I just hope people read the book that is in the show description. The link is in the show description, and then they can see a little bit of why I say that you're full of shit when you do this.
Because he's full of shit when he do it. That's why you say it.
Because the honor is mine, is ours, and we appreciate you. And thanks for the work.
And thank y'all. And maybe we can circle back and do another book thing on the Donald Duck book. I'm gonna read it, and then
I would love to have an excuse to revisit it.
I know Jared Ware just got a copy. There we go. So
there we go.
I have been kicking for him to read it a little bit. But I also want to say, look, the pleasure is mine to be sitting up here because I've been watching y'all before I knew you. Both you, Dr. Burroughs and Dr. Ball. So I've told Jared this before. So, I've been watching and reading your work and admiring your work. So to be able to sit up here with you all and to do this intellectual, movement with you all is just, and then with Renee, to develop a friendship with Renee as well, on this show that she's been doing and holding down, it's all pleasure to get the invite. I feel honored.
Well, this is just puff give on the good vibes. Yeah. And if you and Jared are going to do something on how to read Donald Duck,
we weren't particularly going to do something. I know he got a copy, so I was like, we can get him in here.
I can go read one online on PDF. I'm down.
Yeah. My thing is, it could be, and I don't mind if we're all doing it. Like it needs to be multiple discussions and all discussions. That book is fire. So, all right, listen, good people, please do like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, hit the store, blackliberationmedia.org. Big shout out to everybody on screen, everybody in the Undefeated chat, to those who will see and hear this later. Thank you all very much. Of course, peace only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll see you next week, same time with more Saturday with Renee.